Welcome to Tech and Test, where we unravel the intricacies of technology, delve into the world of software engineering, and challenge the boundaries of software testing. Your host, Peter Johnson, will help you navigate the digital landscape, exploring the latest in tech, sharing insights into software development, and talking to the people that drive our digital world. Now, let's dive into today's episode.
So welcome to episode 4 of Tech and Test. And with me today is Melissa, a quality engineering manager from EasyJet. Melissa, welcome to Tech and Test.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here this Sunday morning. Just thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm really pleased you've made time out of your, gym schedule to join me here today. So, Melissa, we were in communication with each other a few years ago. I think it was during the pandemic, and you were starting a new project, I think an ebook project called Testing Stories. And it was for charity. It was to raise money, I imagine, for charity. And you were looking for test engineers or testers on LinkedIn. So I remember you put a post out, and I remember responding to that post. So, I think that's when we last spoke, right?
Yeah, that's right. So you can go and find it on leanpub.com, testing_stories. It was a while ago since we've done that. We did that during the pandemic. It seems like yesterday, to be honest. It was basically, I had an idea to create this book for charity, to support a mental health charity. And from that, about 30 software testers from around the globe kind of contributed a story, including yourself. It's just a fantastic little book, something that was really kind of my focus during the pandemic, trying to get through that. And it was just really kind of a fun way to get to know and collaborate with members across the globe. So do go grab a copy. I think you can download it for free as well if money's an issue at the moment. So do go and grab a copy.
Yeah, it's a great book. I've learned a lot myself from reading it because every chapter there's someone else's story, right, on testing, and it's almost a pocket resource, which I've almost forgotten about now because it was a few years ago. So I think I need to relift it and see if my opinions have changed from when I wrote that chapter. But very interesting project, and thank you for getting me involved and allowing people to have a voice in writing a book. I think writing a book seems like a very daunting task, right? To start from the beginning and, can't imagine writing a whole book. So breaking it down to a chapter was really cool. Made it really accessible, I think.
Yeah, I really like what you said about kind of giving people a voice in the space, because there's a whole range of different people that have written a story. So people that are new to software testing, people that have done it for a while, people that have different lenses or from different backgrounds. So it's just a really great way to showcase some amazing people. So do go grab a copy.
So Melissa, so tell me, how long have you been in testing? I need to know a bit more about you. Like, how did you start in testing? And obviously now you've become a quality engineering test manager, right? So you've moved from individual contributing engineer to becoming a manager. So I'm interested in touching on those 2 points, how you first got into testing.
Yeah. So probably a lot of people can relate to this story that they fell into testing. So I'm one of those people that fell into it. I was originally an account executive at a company, supporting customers. And then I did sort of a stint in the development department as a software tester to kind of help them out. And I really loved it. I like a bit of that pressure and trying to get to a deadline. I had good attention to detail. And they offered me a role. So that's kind of how I got into it. And I haven't looked back since. So my first role really set the foundation for me. I was working in quite a small company, and we were working in sort of agile ways of working, collaboration and communication. And, the developers were absolutely brilliant. I didn't know much about technology. So I learned things like what a database, a cookie was, and their questions, but they were really open to me asking questions and learning. And that's where I was able to build a really solid technical foundation. And then I've gone throughout my career just asking questions when I don't know. So what is, I don't know, an SSL certificate or whatever? And just through that question asking, I've built up my technical knowledge, and I haven't really specialized. So I've learned a bit about everything like security, performance, accessibility, and so on. So I did a couple of roles as a kind of contributor, software tester. I really loved it. And then I kind of had that drive to move into management. So I've got to be really honest. I had a couple of bad managers,
Right.
and there was a part of me that thought, I can do a little bit better than this. So I thought, let me see if I can do that, if I can achieve that, be that empathetic manager. So I started looking for a test management type of role, and I got a ton of rejections. It's really difficult to move,
Yeah.
do that step up. But there was this one company that took me on as my first test manager. And what they liked about me is my enthusiasm for software testing. So they gave me a chance, and I'm really grateful they gave me that chance. Um, but it wasn't just a complete switch from contributor to management. So I walked into this company, and there's one software tester, and there was me as the manager.
Right.
So I had to do both. So I had to be a hands-on person plus do the management stuff. So throughout kind of my management experience, I've tried to kind of still contribute where I can. I think it's important for managers to understand what's going on in the detail,
Mm.
because however, like how can you help if you don't know that detail?
Yeah.
So I've always tried to so I moved into this kind of doing a bit of both, so contributing and management. And then my next role, I had a bigger team. So I had about 8 direct reports. So
Wow.
that's when it started getting difficult. Well, I can't be the contributor and the manager at the same time.
Right.
But what I can do is do little things. Like I can review the testing. They can give me like a debrief session, and we can talk through what we can do better with our testing. I could review the automation. There's like loads of little things I feel that you can do as a manager just to understand really what's going on. And of course, a big part of it, of why I wanted to move into management, is to support people.
Mm.
People are human beings at the end of the day, and we've all got lives outside of work, and that's a part of who they are. So a big test of that was during the pandemic. It was really tough for people, and it's kind of giving them the support they need to get through that. Maybe they need to go for a long walk for a couple of hours to
Sure.
de-stress. Maybe they need a day off at short notice. That is okay as well. So it's just being that empathetic leader, I think. And it's what I really enjoy doing a bit of both, I say, the software testing and supporting humans to do their best work.
Yeah, very interesting. So do you think the pandemic played a role in you making that decision to transition over to becoming a manager?
So I moved to a manager before the
Okay.
pandemic, but during the pandemic, I realized it was something that was quite suited to me
Yeah.
in terms of being a manager, just being empathetic, being caring and understanding. And I feel that's now my decision that I want to stay in this track. So I want to be doing both the software testing and supporting people by being a manager. So that's where I feel like my career is heading at the moment. But yeah, it's definitely a learning curve for us all during the pandemic, switching to complete remote working.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, that was tough in itself. Like how do we communicate and collaborate now? So lots of interesting just trying to work through those challenges.
Yeah, so Melissa, I have to be very honest. This morning I was looking at your blog I was reading. It was my Sunday reading, breakfast reading. One thing that stood out is your consistency to blog. And I guess I'm interested in touching on the motivation for why you started the blog in the first place.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm trying to look back. I think the first blog post I wrote was quite a few years ago now, and something about skills that a software tester would need. It's interesting writing blogs because I think your views change over time, so you can see how your thinking develops. What really kind of motivated me was to share a bit more within kind of the testing community, but also to learn a bit more about software testing and how I think about software testing. So I find that my blog, it is my kind of the core part of it is to digest my thoughts of how I think about things. It's really been a learning kind of journey for me writing this blog, and I've discovered a lot about how I think about software testing. But in terms of consistency, what I used to do is every Sunday, no fail, I would write a blog post.
Wow.
and I kind of just got into this really good habit of writing and digesting my thoughts on the Sunday. Sometimes I would post a blog, other times I wouldn't.
Right.
So I think I've got about 10 drafts at the moment, just sitting there. Because sometimes I write something and actually I feel, no, I don't really want to publish that right now.
Yeah.
But other times I do. But it's been a really interesting journey. I've learned that sometimes people don't interact with your blog post, yet they do read it. So sometimes I've had someone reach out to me to say, oh, I read your blog post. Can I have a bit more information? And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that you actually read my blog.
That's
So
amazing.
I
Yeah.
think it's really interesting because there's a big thing about statistics at the moment. How many people follow you on LinkedIn, how many people like your posts and stuff like that. But actually, what's more important is people reaching out to you and saying, you know what, hey, I've read your blog. Can you teach me a bit more about this? Or, I found that really interesting, So I just find that sometimes that we need to rethink about how we kind of view statistics like followers and likes and all that stuff. It's actually about what people take away from your content. But yeah, I'm massively proud of it. I think I get about 1,000 views if we're talking about statistics every month now. And yeah, I'm at a point now, well, in the last month or so, I've got a bit of a writer's block, to be honest. I'm like, what do I write about? So I'm kind of just taking a bit of a break. And I
Right.
think that's okay as well, just to actually say, I'm actually not going to write anything at the moment, and that's perfectly fine. But in terms of getting involved with blogging, I would just say go for it and have a go. The majority of people are absolutely supportive and want to see you succeed, and they want to learn from you. So I would say get a Medium or some other blog posts and just start writing whatever your thoughts are, and you'll find it will be a bit of a journey. And you'll change the way that you think as you go along and the way that you approach. I've certainly become a better writer. I kind of felt that English wasn't my strongest. It never has been since school, but I've just got better at it from practice. So yeah, it's just been a really exciting journey. And I'd really advocate for, like, if you're thinking about doing a blog, go for it. Just write something and hit that publish button.
Very good advice. I think, something that scares me about blogging, right, is you're writing your state of thoughts or your thoughts at a moment in time that people can continuously read. And you may have changed your mind after that, right? And do you remember to update the blog, or do you remember to sort of amend the blog or add some sort of note to say, this was my opinion in, 2001, right? I don't know. But yeah, it's really nice to condense your thoughts and write them down. I think I don't do that enough. And I think I have a lot of thoughts in my head, and then I need to go. So when I finish this podcast, I'm going to Sandringham Forest just to go for a walk, just to kind of de-stress, relax, and kind of put my thoughts out, into place. And I think maybe blogging's doing a similar activity for you, where you're just able to kind of think about a topic and write it. It takes a lot of thought to do that, right? To actually write a blog post, you need to understand what you're writing about, and you need to know the topic well enough to write a blog post, and that's not something you can just marvel up in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I really like the sort of the de-stress element as well, because I definitely find writing lets out all the stress. So often I write about things that I'm experiencing at work. I can't obviously talk about the details of what's going on at work, but I kind of, write my thoughts around it. So one case could be around the design sort of concepts and how we as testers get involved in that. So I had an experience at work where we were doing that, and I just thought, let's get my thoughts together around that. Because I kind of feel we talk a lot about interacting and testing with the actual product, but not all the stuff around it, which is really interesting because we do a lot more than what people talk about.
Yeah, I can't agree anymore. That's so true. That's been my experience of testing in the last 12 years. It's been, hidden in the shadows, the hidden heroes of software development. So Melissa, you come across very confident, and that's nice to see. What would you give, what keeps you motivated? What keeps you confident, because what I found in testing, right, the landscape's constantly changing. There's always new features. There's always new processes, new tools. There's a lot of things changing all the time. And dare I say the word large language model, right? There's a lot of change that's going on in the industry as well. So how do you, stay motivated and confident in this sort of changing landscape?
That's a really great question. I think the first thing is I don't need to know everything. So that's the first thing I think about, is that actually there are other team members that know, for example, about artificial intelligence or know how to use tools. The first thing is to be kind to myself, that actually I don't need to know everything. But what I try and do is just try and keep on top of the theory. Like, how does artificial intelligence relate to software testing? So I'm currently doing a Ministry of Testing 30 days into AI kind of challenge at the moment. So hopefully that will get my sort of knowledge up to speed there. But in terms of staying motivated, I suppose it's find what interests you. I find technology really interesting. So that's what kind of motivates and excites me, just talking about technology, how we can create better stuff for the end users. That really excites me. So I suppose it's finding what you align with. What wakes you up in the morning? Is it technology? Is it something else? So it's really finding that niche of what you like to kind of wake you up in the morning.
So Melissa, you've been in testing for a few years, so you understand what it's like working in testing, and you've gained a lot of experience in different roles, different tools, and good experience. And so I guess looking back, and if you were to focus on the beginning of your career and have that mindset of who that person was, what sort of advice would you give to that Melissa?
So the first advice I would give is to get involved in testing communities. That is the one thing that I regret not doing earlier in my career. So in the UK, there's Ministry of Testing. So I wish I'd got involved like a few years earlier into that. The way that you really learn is from other people. So in testing communities, or even at people at work. So I would say get involved with communities, and if there's a software tester at your workplace, go and cozy up to them, give them a couple of biscuits and a cup of tea, and have a chat with them about software testing. Because I think the cool thing to think about is this something that really interests you?
Yeah.
Because if that interests you, then you'll find kind of the motivation to, get involved in certain topics. And I think I've been quite lucky. As I mentioned at the start, I was in a company where questions were welcomed, and, I had the opportunity to learn about performance, security, and so on. And I think very early on in the career is to just do as many things as possible so that you can really understand the landscape of software testing. For me, I have never specialized, but some people, that's a topic up for debate. Like, do you specialize or do
Mm,
you not? In my opinion, I say don't specialize and learn as much as possible. Whereas other people may feel that they're more aligned to, I don't know, security testing or automation and testing. So I think just to start, just learn a broad range of stuff and then see what really excites you. Is it doing the technical coding kind of side of it? Or is it doing kind of security penetration tests? Is that your thing? But without getting a broad range of kind of experience, you won't know what your
yeah.
niche is. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be my summary.
Very good advice, I think. Yeah, just try things, experiment. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think I've done that with multiple careers, right? Not just testing, but before I ended up in software engineering or in IT or whatever you want to call it these days, tech, right? I had a few other roles which were in totally different industries, right? I started off trying to be an electrician.
Oh, okay.
So, I think it's good to like try things and see if they work. But I think my advice would be if then don't work or that, you're not interested in that particular thing, then pivot. It's okay to pivot and change until you find something that you're really interested in. And the only way I think, what you're interested in is, like you said, give it a go, right? You can't, read up on it and just go, maybe I'm interested in this. I think you just have to try it. And
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, just have a go. I really like the idea of experimentation. That's a big thing for me. Just try it out, have a go. If you fail, you've learned something.
yeah.
So failure is really good. Fail lots and often,
Yeah.
because then you really find success through that.
Yeah, sometimes I think in society we don't value failure enough. I think we have, our LinkedIn posts, our Instagrams, which are showing a lot of success or, portraying success in some way. But we don't always portray, it's almost like the iceberg, right? That's under the water, all of that kind of work and effort that's gone into achieving that particular goal, right? And I think we don't talk about that enough and we don't kind of showcase that, like, okay, I've been successful on this thing, but actually I failed 100 times on this other thing. And yeah, I just think it's something that people should be aware of, because I think that can lead to things like imposter syndrome and other kind of things that can creep in over time if you're seeing all this success and you're seeing people being really successful, but you don't realize that everyone's been on the journey to get there.
Yeah. Not only LinkedIn, I think in the workplace as well, talking
Mm,
about failure and it's okay to fail. Performance reviews is a good one, isn't it? In terms of how you're rated and performed, in a quarter. But actually, from a management perspective, what we can do is talk about your failures and what you learned from them. How
yeah.
do you think you've grown from that?
No,
You
seriously,
know,
yeah, I think
so
so.
yeah, so both, I think, not only just social, but also at the workplace, we need to do much more
Mm.
about talking about failures.
Yeah, so I think we need to build up. If we're going to be talking about failures, right, there needs to be a safe space to do that, where, we can have good transparency, respect, and trust, and we can really go into those conversations about, okay, this didn't work quite well, but that's okay. We learned these things, and we can then re-implement. Use that as feedback to improve a process, or actually we need a tool here, or actually we need to change the organization here, right? So I think we should be learning more from failure. If we're being very honest, we should be dissecting where things have gone wrong properly and talking about it more openly and transparently. I think that's something which I think I like to see more of. I don't think it happens enough.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that as well.
Cool. So Melissa, you've mentioned a little bit about some of the things you do to sort of stay on top of technology, and Ministry of Testing, you've mentioned that's a great resource. What do you do in general to kind of stay relevant, stay up to date with industry trends, or maybe even within your workplace? Like, how do you stay on board with new technologies that could be changing?
One of my fundamental ways of working is communication, collaboration, and building relationships with people. So I think that's something that's really important to do both in work and outside of work. So I feel sometimes that I've learned perhaps sometimes a little bit more in the workplace through being interested in things. At the moment, I'm working on sort of a data program. So it's not a usual kind of project thinking about the front end and how users interact with it. It's different, right? It's a big, complex integration project, thinking about things in a different way. And I've learned so much from people at the company, learning about things like data quality, data integrities, and so on. So it's just been really just asking questions from my team members and learning from them. How I like to also stay relevant is kind of I share my thoughts and ideas at conferences and things like that, but also getting feedback and asking, this is how I think, but what do you think? And I've learned a lot from people, from kind of speaking at conferences, but then getting that feedback back. And I think I've really grown in some areas. I did a big piece of work about looking at testing principles and what would they be. And I think my testing principles have been molded by the feedback that I've got from other people.
Wow.
So, yeah, I just think feedback. So getting feedback from people helps you stay up to date. And being really open-minded. I try as much as possible to connect, for example, with people from a broad range of backgrounds and cultures, just to really kind of learn from different people's viewpoints, because we all do have different points of view and cultures that may affect your point of view as well. So it's just like a really interesting thing to just connect with as many as different, different variety, diversity of people as possible. But, it is hard to stay up to date. And sometimes I feel, oh, I'm a failure. I don't know about this, I don't know, AI tool or whatever. But as I said before, it's just to be kind. And actually, I do this thing every week where I write a brag list. Like, what have I done well this week? So, as I mentioned just before we got on the podcast, I'm just doing a bit more exercise at the moment. I've got a big motivation. So that would go on my brag list. Like, I've been to the gym a couple of times. But then also, for example, I supported someone with a retrospective. So that goes down on my brag list. So it kind of makes me feel good about myself, all these little things over time. So when I see all these new exciting things coming on, I feel like that's all fine, but also I'm doing okay at my job at the moment and in life in general. And it's more than just work and technology. I am a person, I've got interests. I want to bring my whole self to work, all the quirks and geekiness or whatever. So yeah, I just really remind myself that just to be kind, I'm a person that's more than work. And I don't need to know everything and learn from other people.
Wow, powerful words.
Yeah.
Very, very inspiring, Melissa, like to think about it like that. I think, you're really bringing the human side to engineering. Because I think sometimes we're labeled as just engineers or managers, and they're just terms that people start to already build up an opinion of what that person is just on that label, right? But behind that label, there's a whole human behind it with needs and interests and values and, and the cultures they grew up in, which can change their perspective. So I think that's really deep, and I think we should be understanding some of that definitely in the workplace, because I think we can empathize with each other more and understand our viewpoints when we should have an environment where we can talk and debate and be happy to disagree, but understand why we're disagreeing, what are the values and maybe beliefs that we have, and how have they been formed to make us have these opinions, which I think is very deep, but it is something we should have some level of awareness of, I think.
Yeah, I feel just getting to know people is just so important just at the workplace, because then you can understand their points of view and where they're coming from. And that kind of helps with debates and disagreements and conflict and stuff
Sure.
like that. You can say, okay, I understand where you're coming from. Have you, and then just have you thought about something different or something like that? It's that open collaboration and communication that I keep going back to.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think I know I can't stress how important that is actually, because at the end of the day, we don't just work with IDEs and tools; we work with people, and understanding how those people work is really important. So, yeah, really good points. So you've mentioned, as we're coming to the end of the podcast, just a few things I wanted to debate about. Curiosity. It seems like you're quite a curious person, right? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think this is how I've always been. Ever since I was little, I've just been like super curious. Um, I really enjoy science and just learning about the unknowns of things. It's just really exciting. There's just so much to learn in this world. Um, yeah, because I really started just like when I was at school learning about sciences, psychology. So I did all the sciences. I was really excited at kind of GCSE and A level. And then I wanted to learn more about kind of brain science. I did
Mm.
about neuroscience because that is where there are a lot of unknowns at the moment, just learning more about the brain and how we interact with the world. I just find that super interesting. But yeah, it's just a part of who I am, I would say. Just I'm really curious. I like to learn about people. When I was growing up, well, my dad was in the army, so we moved
Wow.
around quite a lot. So I had the opportunity to live in different countries like Germany, Cyprus. I went to Oman, Saudi Arabia, and so on. So I think a part of my childhood was interacting with loads of different people from different cultures. And that kind of got me curious, just learning about all of that. So, yeah, it's just a part of who I am, how I've been built in my childhood. But anyone can be curious. It's just about keeping an open mind and actually, asking more questions, because nothing is at face value. Recently, I heard someone say, "Oh, if you want more energy in the morning, you shouldn't eat carbohydrates. It's
Right.
something to do with about the insulin, the spike in your
Mm.
hormones and stuff." But actually, for me, I was thinking, why is that the case? Because I like head to the gym or go out running. Actually, for me, I need my carbohydrates. I
Mm.
need my slices of toast and fruit. So it's always kind of questioning and thinking about things. Is that view right? And actually, it might not be for
Yeah.
you. So it's just asking more questions and doing what you think is best.
Interesting. Yeah, I think we have so much information that, information overload. So dissecting what is relevant to your particular scenario is more difficult, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's difficult. It's really hard. Yeah, especially like in fitness, you get so many different points of view. You should eat X amount of protein, and as a vegan, you're not going to build muscle and all that
Yeah,
business. But actually, that's just one point of view. And actually, you can ask questions, and there's a lot more to it than what they're saying.
definitely. So Melissa, you've got, I can see on the camera in front, that you have a bookshelf behind you with loads of books, right? I'm just curious, are you reading anything at the moment in general?
I read quite a lot of different things. I'm reading a fiction book, Sarah J. Maas. She's got a series. It's kind of like a kind of a fantasy romance. That's something that I'm reading. But in terms of testing books, I wonder if I've got it on my list here. Yeah, I've got a book called Software Testing Strategies by Matthew Huser and Michael Larson that I'm reading at the moment.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's a new book that's come out recently in the last couple of months. And I'm finding it really interesting just learning from them. There was a section on politics that I found super interesting, because at companies I have experienced kind of a bit of kind of like the politics or stakeholder management conflict in software testing. Perhaps people viewing testing as a particular thing, but actually it's a bit more than that. So I just kind of found that chapter really interesting, like dealing with those difficult situations and how do you handle it. And another common book that I reference all the time is Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory's Agile Testing Condensed book. It's just full of tons of information, and I refer to it a lot. For me, I find companies interesting in terms of being agile. It's probably a unique form of agile, I would say. But there's still things from that agile testing book you can take away and bring into your company. Especially a big thing that I advocate for is thinking about the bigger picture when you're doing your software testing, and always taking that step back, going for that walk and actually thinking, what is the bigger picture here? Is it my company appears in the news for a data breach, or, what is it? What could happen?
Yeah, very good point. I think that's not always easy to think about when you're creating a test plan or test strategy, because you're going into the details, right? Looking for edge cases, you're looking for, very feature specific implementation, details maybe. So actually taking that step back, looking from like a product perspective or company perspective, takes a different frame of mind, and maybe you even need to like engage with different people to even get that perspective, right? So like the product teams or product managers who will give you a different perspective than say a software engineer that's going to be implementing that piece of code, right? So yeah, very interesting. Okay, great. So Melissa, we've come to the end of episode 4 of Tech and Test. So thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. If you want to find out more about me, my blog is fishoutthebox.medium.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Melissa Jane Fisher. So that's where I am, and I look forward to connecting with some of you.
Thank you. Yeah, so please do go to Melissa's blog and please reach out to her. So thank you. Thank you, Melissa. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Okay, bye.
Hello, it's Peter. Thank you for listening to this episode of Tech and Test. I personally appreciate it, and I hope you got something out of it too. If you're interested in subscribing, please do, because then you don't miss any episode I've created. And you can also visit techandtest.co.uk, which has all the episodes that I've created. And you can visit peterintest.com for my personal blog too. So I'll see you on the next episode.